All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to this month's Datacom community webcast. Before I hand you off to Dale Russell, who will then hand you off to Joe Lynn, I have a couple of things I need to go over. First, a few questions along the way, and we always hope that you do. Please use the questions box along the right side of your screen, right under the GoToWebinar control panel to ask those questions, and we will get those, we'll take those at the end. Secondly, we are recording today's session, and that's why you're all currently muted. If you have someone you'd like to share it with, you can point them out to the Datacom community probably later this afternoon. I'll get that posted today in all likelihood. And the last thing from me is that we always want to make sure these sessions are valuable for you. So at the end of the session, a short survey is going to pop up. I know that the whole team would really appreciate it if you could give us some feedback. That's it for me, so take it away, Dale.
Great, thank you so much. Again, I'm Dale Russell, the product owner for Datacom. And with me today are Sheila Miller, who's the product offering manager for the databases products at Broadcom, both Datacom and IDMS, and also Nikisha Newberry, who's our product manager for Datacom. But most importantly, we have today Joe Lynn. And so he's our speaker. Before we get started, we just need to remind you that some of the content of this presentation may be forward-looking, and we just need to remind you that any of these things that we talk about today are subject to change before they go GA. Today's session is about buffer pools by area. And our speaker is, as I said, Joe Lynn. He's a software engineer with us in Datacom and has had a variety of roles over the years that he's been with us. He's currently leads the development effort for the database engine part of Datacom. And today he's going to be speaking, talking about what's new, what is this feature, what's it all about. He'll talk about how to define buffer pools by area. He'll talk about how adjustments can be made dynamically and talk about some of the reporting and the dynamic system table that relates to this and go over some messages, and then we'll handle some questions. But before we get started, we wanted to ask you in the audience 3 questions. The first question is, which of these buffer management parameters do you use today? Now, we're talking about your production MUFs. So Lynn is going to open up the poll, but the question is, do you use SYSPOOL and DATAPOOL? Do you use FlexPool? Do you use alternate buffer pools, buffer pool def? Or have you even begun to use buffer pools by area? So let us know which of these you use today in your production MUFs. And maybe you use one of them, maybe you use all 4.
All right, so it says it's distributing the poll, so that means folks should be able to see it soon. Sometimes it takes us a little bit of time for it to distribute. Oh, all right, people are starting to vote now, so we'll keep it open for another 30 to 45 seconds. Don't want to bog it down too much. All right, it looks like we're at about 50% of folks have voted, so let's go a few more seconds. Let's say 10 more seconds, everybody. All right, thanks very much.
Great. Well, let's move to question number 2. In regard to FlexPool, if you in fact did you specify that you use FlexPool, do you really use that feature to adjust the buffer pools during a given day or the week or some point in the month? Yes, no, or unsure. And if you don't use this feature, maybe you could just not reply. But if you specify FlexPool, do you really use it?
All right, so it's distributing, and then once the votes start, I will, all right, the votes have started, so we will leave it out there and give folks a chance to vote. Let's say 10 more seconds. All right, thanks everybody.
And your third polling question for now, the last one for the moment, is what do you do to prioritize applications in your environment? You probably know which applications I'm talking about when I say those that pay the bills, the most important, most critical to your operation. So we want you to check all the ones that apply. Do you prioritize it in your scheduling system, in Workload Manager, in CICS? Do you set priority appropriately in the URTs that you use for those apps? Do you use FlexPool to add buffers? Do you do something else? And again, check everything that you do to give priority to those highest priority applications.
All right, so it's distributing. Folks are not starting to vote yet. There we go. Votes are coming in now. All right, let's say another 10 or 15 seconds. All right, thanks very much, everybody.
Great, thank you so much for that feedback. That will help us get to know your use of our buffer managing schemes so far. So we're ready now for Joe. So tell us about this new feature.
Great, great, Dale, thank you. So this deals with another type of buffer pool. I'll talk about all of them. We don't often do this kind of a feature. And so when we do, we take into account everything we have learned from the past. And we take user input, our own input, and try to do the best possible to solve the maximum amount of priorities with a limited amount of time. And so we think this is really important. The primary tuning of a multi-user, which is ultimately the performance of a multi-user, deals with buffering, specifically index and data buffer. So this is a really big deal. And of course, you know we don't change it very often. So this is a private buffer pool. It's available when you want to prioritize an area outside of the common SYSPOOL data pool. It's different than covered. I'll talk about the details. It's different than what we call the alternate buffer pool definition. It's provided or allowed for every multi-user that does not have a muffplex coupling facility. It's implemented with two multi-user startup options, buffer pool index and buffer pool data. So it's a single area or a set of areas, but individually it's a single area, and the buffers are not inside of the SYSPOOL data pool or buffer pool definition. And they are not redundant with covered. Okay. A lot of users have covered, and it's very old. It's been around a long time. It's been in the code a long time. And so things that people were concerned about covered, we try to change and make better. So covered is still available, and it will be probably forever, but we would hope the new one resolves some of the things. And these are the disadvantages of what we tried to address. Covered memory is an addition to the active blocks that are currently within the SYSPOOL data pool buffer pool. So they're add-on, they're additional 64-bit memory. The active blocks are in the pools that I mentioned. So covered has what is in covered, but it's not active, if you will. The active blocks are in one of the pools. It requires a memory copy when we want to put it into a pool. Okay, and this is one of the problems we are trying to address is that there's a cost associated with moving 64-bit pages around. The memory blocks are restored to the other pools when they're deleted and they were not active, and then we have a new need. So they are in covered after an IO, and they're also in a pool. At some point, they can leave the pool. If they need to get refreshed, they come from covered. That's the point of covered. Covered is to save read IO. If you have a large SYSPOOL data pool buffer pool, i.e. the pools, the individual blocks that are covered might be rarely needed. It doesn't mean you'll have any of the covered in a real active pool. They are designed, the specific point here, they are designed to be statically sized. They have never been intended to be dynamically tuned. That was just part of how they were architected in the beginning. They have a minor tuning thing that exists, but they were never intended to be actively tuned. And another thing they don't do is they don't support what we call pipelining or deferred writes. So every time a buffer needs to leave the pool, SYSPOOL, DATAPOOL, buffer pool, every time it needs to leave, it has to be written through DASD. Covered saves none of that. That was never intended to, and it doesn't. It has to be updated, but it doesn't save anything. Okay. Buffer pools by area versus the buffer pool definition. So here are the disadvantages of the buffer pool definition that we tried to address. The pools are built for multiple areas. The buffer pool definition, you have 100 IXX, 100 DXX, 100 data, but they were always intended that it might be one or more areas. So because of that, they have funny names. They are like data 02, IXX 22. So you have names, and that makes them very hard to join with other dynamic system tables. So if you wanted to tune them based upon joining information, it's just not built for that. Even if you wanted to have like data 03 as a single area, the naming standard makes it harder to join. Not impossible, but harder. So in any case, we wanted it not to be this, the new thing. For the pool definition, buffers can be added and deleted, but not based upon the active work specifically. It's not, you can add buffers with you can increase the count or decrease it, but it really wasn't built for active tuning. So you can do that a little bit, but that's not its primary efficiency. And it's not suited for favoring a single area and automatically adjusting those buffers. So you can do those things, and some users are doing those things, but it wasn't made simple to do those things. Simple in the way the new one is. So a disadvantage of SYSPOOL, DATAPOOL, these buffers are not sized for the one area. When we're talking about the buffer pools, we tend to have a large number of them, which is a lot of memory, a big amount of memory. And when you do that, you want it sized exactly the way you want it. So a SYSPOOL pretty much has to have 8K index buffers because somebody may want it. It has to have very large data pool buffers because somebody may want it. And the new one, buffer pool by area, it's exactly what it needs to be. In these pools, the SYSPOOL, DATAPOOL, the least recently used algorithm. So what's thrown out is what has been referenced the longest time ago. So if you had 10,000 data buffers, every time we need one that is not in memory, we must remove one in order to read the new one. So it is the 10,000 activist entries. This buffer pool by area will allow an area to be outside of that scope. It'll have its own private LRU chain. The other pools have a restriction of 99 or basically 100,000, whereas buffer pool by area, users wanted more than that, so it's more like covered. It has the same restrictions as covered will have. The buffers can be added and deleted, again, in SYSPOOL, DATAPOOL. They can be with FlexPool, but most users do not do that. It can be done, but it's not really intended to be actively done, although some users could have done that. Okay. So what we perceive as the benefits. The buffers are sized specifically for one area, whether it's data or index, it's one area. The blocks are in memory once. They're not redundant like covered. Sites today have lots of 64-bit memory, but this is a goal of not redundant. We want them all to be unique. It can have a large quantity of buffers, similar to what covered has. It allows an important area to have priority and control of its memory. Thus, you can reduce the I/O to that area. It's easy to tune, and half of what I'm going to talk about is really the tuning characteristic. The tuning was the biggest thing that we're accomplishing. There's going to be 5 strategies of defining it, and I'll show you that next. Oh, one more slide here. We did something different. The SYSPOOL and the the SYSPOOL and the buffer pool definition for the index, they have separated IXX and DXX. That's very traditional. It's very ancient, and clients have gotten used to that. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's very common, and people tend to think that way. Part of the problem is you don't know how to size it, and so what we're doing with this new one is the buffer pool by area is the index. It is the index in its entirety. So it's a data set, like covered deals with the index. So it includes IXX and DXX. And what that gives us for this pool is it allows us to know that everything will fit. We don't have to move things around. We don't have to move it from an IXX buffer to a DXX buffer. And that may not occur commonly, but it does occur. It's also easier to estimate it. So if you want to increase the size of the buffer pool by area for index, it's very simplistic. It doesn't need to care about what is index high level and low level. And clients have asked about that a few times over the years. And it is not easy to tell. There's some reporting, but it varies. And so that was really important when we did this, to keep it simple and basically allow this to be for index. And so it works like data areas. So the big question is, why did we do it? Why did we do it now? We do a lot of benchmarking, and the problem with benchmarking though is you can benchmark anything you want. You can run these one-off tests and prove something. So the exact numbers of this buffer pool, you can't know the exact numbers because everybody's multi-user is different. And at different seconds, it's doing different things. So it's not exactly easy, but we have done enough to where we are comfortable that the buffer pool by area is more efficient, okay, than covering it. And it's more convenient than a buffer pool definition. The actual buffer pool by area executes in real time, executes exactly as a buffer pool definition. It is a buffer pool definition. It just has a different front end. So whereas a buffer pool definition, you say data 03, here you say database 2 area DD1. So I think that's better and that's simpler, but it is a buffer pool definition, but it has a different driver control. One of the things that we have been asked to do, and so one would consider a future, is to see about automation, and these will help. Okay, we'll talk about defining them. So on this page, there's 5 basic styles. It's probably too many, but the thinking is that some user will like each and every one of them, and it will be better for a certain purpose. So forgive me for that there's 5 of them, but this is what we have. So on the screen, the examples all have buffer pool data, but consider it's buffer pool data or buffer pool index. You define a database, you provide an area name. The area name is optional. If you specify an area name, then it applies. If you do not specify an area name, then at the time of the open, any area in that database will cause this to be a match if there's not a specific area name also involved. So that's the simple part. Bytes, that's one of the options. Because people that are familiar with covered are used to dealing in bytes, this option might be good if you're converting a covered to this. So in bytes, you provide a number. And this is a startup. You can provide a number in KMG, and it's the same sizes that covered would let you do. So for one group of users, you can code bytes. It's not the most flexible, but it might be the simplest for some users. The next one is number of blocks. The number of blocks is how buffer pool definition works. You know, it's how SYSPOOL DATAPOOL works. So people that are more familiar with blocks rather than bytes, this one might be better. The next three kind of sort of started as what covered did, but they go beyond what covered did as a percentage. So you have 3 percentages, which is not a specific number, but it's a percent of something. So the first init, these are the initialized tracks. So if we have initialized, whether it's an init or extend, if we have initialized 3,000 tracks, then that's the number, the percent of that. And you know, if you extend, that would theoretically grow. But when we open the data set, it's based upon how many initialized tracks we have at that instant, and it's based upon your percentage. And the percentage would be 1 to 100, except that people who plan to extend or dynamically extend, you could go above 100, you can go up to 200. I think covered had that option as well. So, but some users really oversize their data sets. So even if they want 100%, they've oversized it, which means there's a whole bunch of unused blocks. So the next one covers that case, high. This is, high means all of the high use, all of the blocks that have been used. So if you allocated 1,000 cylinders, but you only have data in 20 cylinders, this high use would probably be 20 cylinders, and there'd be a percentage of that. And again, you can do 1 to 100, and you can oversize it, anticipating more, going up to 200%. And the last one, I'm thinking will be the more common one, but of course, who am I to know? But it's active. So what multi-user will do is when the data set is open, we'll see how many blocks are considered active in the index or data. That is data blocks who are within high, but have not been fully deleted. And Datacom maintains that as a number. So this is the number of active blocks. And again, it's a percentage number. And again, you can do 1 to 100. And if you want to oversize it, anticipating growth or whatever, you can do that. So there's 5 styles. Different users will pick different ones. You may pick different ones for different databases. One of the things we noted is in QA testing, we start with a lot of empty data sets and grow them. So when we used high, that didn't work very well. And when we used active, and it happened when it was open, there isn't hardly any open. So users will have to be aware that you have to be a little bit careful. If you have data sets that start empty and grow, you might have to use the init function or the blocks or bytes. So it's not quite as simple as we'd like it, but this is what we have. So let's go forward. These are some examples of the index. Database 2, IXX, active 10%, base 15, IXX, active 100%. An example of a database 360, no area. No area in this case means all MDIs. It means IXX, IO1, IO5. So I tend to use comma personally, but some users will use IXX because they're more comfortable with it. But in any case, these are just examples of a QA test in particular. Sometimes they're high, sometimes they're init, sometimes they're blocks. It has to test everything. So this is some index examples. We'll do some data examples. Database 2, all areas, but of course there's only one area in that database. Database 15, the DDD, the important one, active 100%. And again, we have examples of bytes and active and blocks. And some have area names and some do not. So this is just showing you the variety of what you can do. Some comments about defining the areas. You can define almost anything. So Datacom doesn't care whether the database exists at the time you bring multi-user up, because you might add it. And we don't know whether the area name may exist. So the bottom line is, do this with care. You're not going to get an error. The database must be a legal number. The area name must be a legal name. But other than that, you can do it wrong. Data blocks less than 5 will round up to 5. Probably nobody should ever we don't think 5 would be a good number probably for anybody for any case, but who knows? There might be a control block and you have one and only one record. In any case, the index minimum is 99. During QA, when we used 5, we ran into, quote, problems because of how the index works. And so in the end, the index needs 99 blocks. Whether it's small or not won't matter. We're going to have 99 blocks for an index. Large memory size, it is the same as the covered. You can go to 2 gig unless you override that number up to 20 gig with the covered max size. To protect users who code just crazy numbers, if you don't use %, and even if you use %, we will not allocate more blocks than there's in the data set unless you use the % and it's over 100. So that was a protective mechanism. It is currently gated. This is a brand new facility. It's complicated, and it's not overly complicated, but the bottom line is we felt that it was appropriate. So the first cut, we limited it to 5 areas of index or data, and currently we allow 10. And I want to be clear, that's 10 statements. So if you say you want to do database 300 and has 50 areas, if you leave the area name out, you can have 50 areas for that one statement. But if you want to have just 10 of those areas, you can, but you can't have 15. You can either have all or up to 10. So this is our gate. We don't intend to relax this gate unless you ask us to. So right now, we think this is a reasonable number, and we're going to wait until we have requests before we change that number. We're trying to protect the amount of memory that might be used. Okay. So the more exciting part, you get to tune it. That's what the point is. And we'd like the tuning to be fully automatic, and you can kind of sort of make it automatic as well. But in any case, there's two flavors of tuning. You can use new size. So in the definition, you had a size. You had blocks and a size. You had a % and a size. So of the 5, you always had a size. You had a number. So you can change that number. So like if you said active 20% at startup, you can change it to active 50%. You can change it to 200%. So you can change the size using new size. You cannot change. If you had active at startup, it will be active until multi-user ends. You can't change the init bytes are active, those 5. You can't change those, but you can change the number. The number is changed with new size. You see that in this real world test examples in the middle, what this example shows is database 2 DD1 active went to 100%, some number of seconds, 161, 149, 138. It went to 100, 250, and it circled every some number of seconds. That was for testing, to show that we can add and drop buffers correctly time after time. And so you would not do that kind of a test, but you might do a different kind of a thing. And you see that for the DDD, we had a similar thing where we wanted to force it to be active. So this is subtask auto. Many of you are using that, some probably not. It basically means in multi-user, that number of seconds, multi-user will have woken up and do this modify command on your behalf. So it is automatically doing something. And the last example is using DB utility to do the same thing. Some of you will probably have a DB utility that you schedule. So it may run every hour, every day, whatever, and it will adjust these new size numbers. Okay. This is some results. Some of the messages you see that with those database 15, the DDD who is active went from 2690 to 1345, 449. So you see that we'll increase by 1 block if needed. No, I take it back. I think we have a minimum of 5. Sorry, but we will increase or decrease based upon what you've asked us to do. And these are just some examples. You tell us what you want, like you want to go from 10% to 11%, and we'll tell you what did we do. What did that cause to happen? Okay. The other one is called resize. So this is not changing that number. What this is saying is when the data set was opened, Datacom applied all the percentages. But the thing is, those percentages could change over time. Some of your data sets don't change much, and so it wouldn't matter much. So in this case, we say buffer pool resize, and you give it one database or a range of databases. In this case, we say, I want to do them all. You don't have to, but you can. It doesn't take much effort. So it is available anytime you use the percentages, init, high, or active. We do it for each database that you ask us to do, the one or the range. Buffers will be added or removed to meet your current percent. So you understand why with active of a database that changes much, you would want to do this periodically. How often? I don't know. But as often as you want. You can do it every hour, every 5 minutes. You can do it every minute. Probably not too often, but you can. And this is an example of the message. I think I have another page of messages if we go on. So these are resizes based upon the percent, not based upon changing the new size. You know, it's changing it's doing a resize. So again, this is just telling you what we're doing based upon activity. A lot of these don't change a lot because we don't change enough activity, but especially if you start small and grow, you'll have bigger changes. Okay, let's keep going. Reporting. We tried to do better than we did for anything else. And so we tried to give you all that we can imagine you would need. And so there's a lot of columns here, so you may think it's a little bit complicated, but I hope that's all clear and obvious. We have to tell you the database and area. We tell you the type. It's either going to be data or index. The requested size. The requested size is either a percentage, 1 to 200, or it is a size in memory, like 10 meg, 1 meg. It could be in K or G. And the class, AC for active, IN for init, etc. So the 5 classes. So we're going to tell you, this is what you ask multi-user to do. So this is what you ask us to do. And if you modify this number, this is the current size that you've asked us to do. So it isn't the startup number exactly. It starts with the startup number, but otherwise it is the current number. And I will say nothing will be on this page if you haven't opened it. Okay, that's not quite true with the way some of the other pools work, but for this pool, nothing exists, nothing real exists until you open it. Once you've opened it, it will be here forever. Even if you delete the database, it will still be here because it's historical information. So what is the buffer size? We found that we absolutely had to know that. So the buffer size at this time, you know that you can close a data set and resize it, or you can resize it while it's open in many cases. But in any case, this is the current buffer size. The initialized blocks. This is not what you ask it to do. This is in effect from a CXX report. So we wanted to use this to correlate to all these other fields. And we didn't want to keep going to a CXX report. We wasted a lot of time. So in any case, this is the blocks that were initialized at the time we printed the report. Not necessarily the time we opened the data set, but the time we printed the report. So that will be fairly flexible. The next is what the actual pool is. So the pool involved, it has a size in memory. So we're telling you at this moment, this pool has 37 meg, 8 meg, etc., 96K. So this is what the pool represents at this moment. And we'll tell you how many blocks that represents. So whether you allocate it or defined it with blocks or whatever, this is the same information. What size in memory are we using? How many blocks is that? And what percent of the initialized blocks? So let's keep going. Then again, regardless of how you defined it, we're going to tell you compared to high. So how many blocks are high at this time? And what is the percent of the high blocks? Even if you're using active, you may want to know what high represented. And we also have the active. So even if you used init, you're going to get high and active because these numbers are very interesting and it might cause you to want to change how you did something. So we're going to give you what we're doing, plus what high would look like, plus what active would look like, in this case, what the block counts are. The remove blocks are a little bit complicated. If you close data sets, we have to remove the blocks from memory. So if you never close a data set, these counts will be 0 or probably pretty small. If you close a data set, then they'll be bigger. But we found people that don't think they're closing data sets, and then they do, and they couldn't understand the percentages. And so this is what we needed to make the percentages work better. Let's continue. So because the report, we're talking about a report right now, it's in the EOJ report or the all info report, it didn't have a lot of space. And so what we did is we tell you use 1, which is a really important number, and then we tell you what use 5 percentage is. So it's not the raw number, which would have taken a lot of space, but it's the percentage. So we can see that in this first area, he got 97.8%, 5+. Those are great numbers. Some of them, like one of them got 12%. That doesn't mean it wasn't a good thing to do. It just means he didn't get high reuse. And if you look at that particular area involved with 12% and say, he's not very important to me, and I'm okay with 12%. But if you come back and say, oh my God, he's one of my important dudes, well, you need to give it some more, you need to give it more memory, more bytes, you need to get more blocks or a higher percentage. So I think users will like this. It saves space and it gives you, I think, a good metric with little space. So let's continue. We have a dynamic system table, which has basically the same information as a report with one big exception. Here, it's more traditional. It doesn't have that 5%. It has the buffer use 1, buffer use 2, buffer use 3. So those of you that are used to using dynamic system table with the pools, this will look like that. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but that was the choice. But it is available to you. Messages. We only have a couple of messages, and I've given you examples. When we, well, not of all these. When we open it, so a lot of this happens, the magic happens when it's opened. If it's not opened, if you close and open, it'll start over. But otherwise, you have to basically new size, resize. So at the time it's open, we'll tell you what we did. We'll tell you that the database number, the area, how many blocks do we have, the buffer size, how big is one block, the class of active, high, whatever. So this is telling you good information. And obviously, I told you about on the new size, resize, we tell you what we actually did. Let's go ahead. So that's what we did and how we did it. And we think this is a really good thing, but it's brand new, and we expect people to transition to it a little bit faster in test systems and certainly slower in production systems. And if we ascertain that we need to make any adjustments, then we'll make those adjustments. But I'll open the floor to questions.
Thanks, Joe. I don't see any questions in the queue right now. Folks, if you do have questions for Joe, please put them in the questions box. You can type them right in there. We'll give everyone a few seconds to type. All right, I don't see any questions coming in, but maybe some will come in as we continue with our polls and some of Dale's wrap-up stuff. So thank you, Joe. I guess we can probably continue, Dale.
Okay, we do have 3 more polling questions. We wanted to get a sense of your thinking after you'd heard what Joe said. So the first one is, have you begun any testing of buffer pools by area? This went GA a couple or 3 weeks ago. Just wondered if anybody has started working on this yet. You've downloaded it, you got it in your test environment, starting to work on it, yes or no?
All right, people are starting to vote. Say another 10 seconds. All right, thanks everybody.
As we said, we expect that people will begin adopting this in the near term in tests and then move it into production. So what would be your plans? Would you plan to implement in production, and we're talking production, in the next 3 months, up to 6, up to a year, maybe more than that? Maybe you're not sure. And maybe somebody says, you know, I don't think I will. I hope that isn't your answer, but we just want to get your sense of when you think you might begin to implement this in production. So choose one.
All right, people are voting. Let's say another 10 seconds. All right, thanks very much.
Okay. And our final question is, if you would like somebody to reach out to you and talk about this more, about what the feature does, how it works, how it would benefit you, then give us your name and your email address.
Yeah,
We'd
Dale.
love to.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so because of a limitation with GoToWebinar, we can't do this as a poll. So I actually added it to our post-event survey. It's the first question.
Okay, great. We would just love to know, and so we would need your contact information to know who it is that wants us to talk. So with that, we'll move ahead. We do have some kind of informational things that are coming up here, so I'll turn this over to Nikisha.
Okay, well, thank you, Dale. Next slide. We just wanted to, close our call with making sure you're all aware with all the ways that you have available to partner with us and ways that you can get involved with us. And we're always interested in hearing your thoughts. So one of those main points is submitting your ideas through our Datacom cadre space on our community website. You can vote on existing ideas, comment on ideas. It lets us know what is important to you. So we just want to set that as a good reminder. Next, we have a validation program, and with that, we provide monthly meetings, and it's another way for you to hear progress from us on a routine basis, as well as being able to influence the features, like the one you heard today that was delivered early to customers to test through our validation program, and it allows customers to be able to provide feedback before we make an enhancement fully GA. Next, we have our community webcast series, such as the one we're on today. We'll be continuing with these on the second Thursday of every month. And every quarter, we're going to be doing a quarterly office hours. In the office hours, it gives you an opportunity to bring your topics to discuss, as well as we'll also share additional updates and topics as well. So we look forward to hearing from you. On the topic of webcasts, we do have a session coming up again next week. So on April 21st, we have a session focused on design thinking and why should I care. Actually, I'm going to give control over to Sheila so she can give a good overview.
Thanks, Nikisha. Hello, everybody. This webcast will include members of our Broadcom user experience team, and we'll share the insights and the benefits of design thinking workshops and really the journey that we take in partnership with our customers. So at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to really delve into your project needs with a focus on the as is and the to be state. So we basically along the way uncover pain points, gaps, and overall requirements that you may have. And then that just in turn really enables us to determine how best to deliver upon those needs. So if you're not familiar with this, or even if you are, we hope that you can join us next week. It should be a very interesting webcast. So thank you, Nikisha.
Thank you, Sheila. We hope to see all of you there. Next update, we have communities ideas. So you may have noticed that we are trying to clean up our ideation site. So there's been a lot of ideas posted over the years. So we'll be trying to, basically mark ideas that aren't going to be implemented in the short term as not a top priority, or close them out, and then prioritize the remaining ones so we can get those scheduled. So it's really important to hear from you. If you have ideas that are most valuable to you, please go out and vote, or send us an email and let us know if you have anything top of mind that you really want to be considered. We'll be regularly checking our idea site and making sure we try and fine tune it going forward. And here is how you will go about submitting ideas. Through community.broadcom.com, there's an ideation tab. You'll select ideas, and then you'll filter to Datacom and apply filters. And there you'll be able to see the list of existing ideas. And then you can submit an idea by hitting the new option, and then you just type what you would like to have us do, or a problem you're having, and then save. And again, if you run into any technical issues, just reach out to us. My next announcement is on our education. So Datacom has consistently been providing web-based training to you all, and at this time it's provided at no cost to all customers who are on active maintenance. So we have many courses out there. We continue to add additional courses, and we're internally working on additional courses that will be published once we complete those. So I'd like to encourage you all to take advantage of that offering. In addition to the courses, we actually providing digital badges as well. We actually produced a new badge just recently, Datacom DB Utility User Databases Management, another intermediate badge you can earn for focusing on that utility. And so, yes, we just want to make sure you're all aware. And if you have topics or educational courses that you need, please, again, reach out to us and let us know what your education needs are. And our next announcement is focused on Vitality. Many of you hopefully have heard about this program going far. Our Vitality program is a way to attract talent, grow and retain skills, so you can leverage your current investments in mainframe and your Datacom environments. We provide on-site and virtual instructor-led training to you, and we provide our experts to basically train either your resources or our resources and make them available for hire. So it's a very low-cost training offering for our Broadcom customers. Next announcement, many of you are probably already aware, our end of service announcement for Datacom AD for releases 14.0 and 15.0 is, the deadline for that is August 31st, 2022, so coming up soon. And we just hope everyone is aware and that you plan to upgrade to the current release, Datacom AD 15.1, before August. And if you run into any issues, again, please let us know. And next, another announcement is CSM, our Chorus software manager, is going to be end of life coming up soon. And so I believe the deadline for that is in 2023, so about 12 months from now. The new best standard going forward is to utilize USMF for both software installations and deployments, configurations, and as well as maintaining and maintenance. So there's education available to you on Learning at Broadcom to learn more about ZOSMF. And again, if any issues or questions, please reach out to us. And that concludes all of our announcements. Are there any more questions that were submitted, Len?
Yeah, we actually had some questions come in while you guys were wrapping up. So the first one is SYSView going to see the dynamic stats?
Well, I guess I'll answer that. SYSView reads the dynamic system tables that Datacom provides, and so there's a kind of a two-step, and it's a cooperative process to get something into SYSView. One is we have to produce the dynamic system table or do the update to the dynamic system table, and then it's up to SYSView to then include that in their screens somewhere. So we're doing our part. You've got the dynamic system table, but it'll be up to SysView to then incorporate that into one of their screens.
Thanks, Dale. Next question. If the area name is not specified on a buffer pool index for an MDI, will it impact all the index areas?
It will mean the definition applies to every area that exists. So if you had a database that only has an IXX, of course, the question doesn't matter. If you had like 2 MDIs, IO1, IO2, so you have 3 data sets, IXX, IO1, and IO2, the definition applies to all 3 equally. All 3 equally will have the exact same definition.
Thanks, Joe. And then the last question we have is, what happens if a specified data area is reblocked by BA24 without being closed?
In that case, what we require you to do is during your startup, you must, that's the case where you need to tell us, because we don't know you're going to do that. You have to tell us what size you want. So if it's currently blocked at 4K and you intend to go to 8K, you have to tell us when MUF comes up that you want 8K buffers. If you do not tell us at startup that you're going to 8K buffers, you will not be allowed to. So this is a case where you have to know ahead of time that's what you're going to do, and you have to plan for it.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions coming in. Folks, so I'll remind you once again that we do have that survey that's going to pop up when we close the webcast, and we also have that final poll question that I had to add to the survey. Dale, Nikisha, Joe, anything else you want to add before we close?
I just say thank you, Joe, for a great presentation, and thank you all for attending.
All right, have a great day, everybody.
Thank everybody. Take care.